Hey folks, today we're gonna show you how the sausage is made. We're not getting dirty. This is not an X-rated thing. It's all cool. What we're talking about is we're talking about build tools and we're talking about the build process. And specifically, we'll be getting into how Meteor takes your code and then transforms it into something that's runnable. And with us today, Küster will give a little bit of an explanation a little further into this about how that works. And we have Nacho Codoner from the Meteor team, who's going to talk about the future of the Meteor build team. Today, we've got a very tight, concise episode where we're focused on some news items and related things to builds. And then we're going to be getting directly into this understanding Meteor topic. So with that, I just want to say, and let me get back over here where my document is, because I am not always the best at doing this from the cuff. This is episode 32, and you're watching or listening to This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly newscast of the MeteorJS Dispatches podcast, which is aimed at both new and returning MeteorJS users. Our program is brought to you by the MeteorJS community ambassadors who share information, events, activities, and other newsworthy items. Excuse me. I'm your host, Alim Gafar, coming to you from my dungeon here in New York City. It's not really a dungeon, it's my office. That's it. And with us today is...
Hello, everybody. I'm Dvorak. I'm back in Prague, Europe, with the big jet lag.
Hello, I'm young Küster from Germany. I'm not jet lagged, but I'm also sitting in a dungeon.
And joining us today from Meteor Software, we have... You can introduce yourself.
This is Nacho Codoner. Yeah, I'm working in Meteor, and I just in a room that pretends to be an office.
All right, folks. And I think this morning we're going to have a little bit of a setup towards what we're discussing today. And I'm going to turn this over to Jan Küster to go further into explaining what's happening.
Yeah, so let me introduce you very first, before we go into any detail, what's actually a build tool. This is important because sometimes we have people watching the stream that are maybe beginners or not so experienced in things that are under the hood. And I want to give a brief explanation, not super detailed, but really simplified on what's a build tool and how it works. So in a build tool, usually you have first, before it comes to running, you have your project sources. And you have your JavaScript, you have your HTML, SCSS, CSS, whatever, imported modules, which you usually import with npm yarn or whatever package manager. And you have sometimes assets like images, sound, whatever static data you want to link to your web application. And the build tool picks these up and gets some configuration and rules from you in order to transpile down the JavaScript to a ECMA version that is supported by the target runtime, bundles multiple files into a few. So in order to just have a few files, and also deduplication of multiple imports, minification of the code in order to save bandwidth, and many more features. And sometimes there are also plugins you can run on this for very specific purposes, resolve imports, because this is still a very important topic on multiple runtimes, but also things like optimize images. And the final output is then a runnable app that you can execute. And for example, in Meteor, this would be the server bundle and the client bundle. And this is just a little overview to get you started what actually the build tool is, or what the build tool does. And at a later point in this stream, we will also cover how this works in Meteor, again, in an understandable and simplified way. And then we will get back to Nacho, who will also show some very interesting extensions of the current build tool.
Excellent. Thank you, Jan. And if you've had one Jan, you can't have enough. We've got to give you another. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to the news.
All right, news. Let me switch to my screen over here. So we have a new Meteor 3.0 beta 7 release. According to the what is left until Meteor 3.0 documentation, as we can see here, this is the last beta. Let me zoom in a bit more here. So as you can see, Meteor 3 beta is finished with everything, and we have started on Meteor 3.0 RC, aka release candidate. So this is quite exciting news. Let's take a look on what this actually means in practice. So we have a new Meteor installer, or specifically meaning that the npm Meteor installer got fixed, and here are some instructions how to get everything set up properly if you had issues with it previously. We have the React skeleton updated to work out of the box, and there are pull requests for all the other skeletons as well, so that will be coming up in the release candidate. Finally, observe async was introduced. So if that's something that you have been using observe, then that's now async as well. At least in my code, that will be something to update. And of course, there is quite a few bug fixes and test cases fixes. All of that stuff is in the latest beta, and we'll be looking more towards the release candidate with everything going on.
Very good. Nacho, have you been involved in this at all, or this is a different part of the work that you do?
No, yes, I have been involved into updating the CLI. Now we are using NPX as any other framework or platform is doing for installation the project. In this case, you need to run now NPX Meteor beta, just that. I would recommend you to clean the NPX context. The instructions are there because you can run into some issues. And the reason that we have got away from using npm install -g Meteor is because it's no longer providing the output of what is happening as part of the script running. If you want to get that, you need to pass now foreground script. So we transit to the other because of this reason.
So
Okay.
I have a question. Was that the issue why the installation on Windows was problematic? Did that fix this Windows installation issue, this big one?
Yeah, there were several issues. One of them is that you cannot see actually any output, what is the process going on. The other reason is one internal package that was using this script needed to be upgraded for the latest node version. So this was a mandatory fix that has solved into all the operative system, which I also tested that on all my devices.
So we have happy Windows users now.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I am a Windows user actually, but I'm using WSL, Windows System of Linux. So at the end, I'm not going into core Windows anyway.
All right, and we have also started work on Meteor 2.16, which would be the last of the 2.0 series. You can see my Monday stream on my personal channel about how we started merging pull requests into that, and I think we'll hopefully have that out at least RC candidate next week, depending on how people who have submitted pull requests respond. So what do you have for us, Alim?
Well, I've been I dig around a lot during the week looking for good stories to tell, and one of them that I found, and especially because we were talking about builds, and there was a lot of back and forth between myself and Küster, and I think Küster and Nacho, with regard to how do we talk about this? How do we present the story? And one of the things I felt was that there is this need for these very conceptual stories to have some kind of structure around them. You know, we're talking about very conceptual things, and it's really hard to understand sometimes, to make connections and see how it works. And if we're able, you know, there are a lot of us that are visual learners, if you want to call them that. You know, we understand concepts that are spoken of and maybe written down, but when we're talking about high level abstractions, or even actually abstractions with details, it can get very confusing sometimes. And I know for myself, one of the things that have always been confusing to me is just how promises and callbacks work in JavaScript. And so, you know, I understand to a degree, but then there's a point where magic happens to me. And I ran into this article by this woman. Her name is Lydia Holly. She is a front-end developer. And she's written a number of different articles on visualizing. I think the prefix for the articles that she writes is JavaScript visualized, and she's been doing this for a long time. And I'm also struck because later on I'll tell you something else about her that I found to be really, you know, different in a way, and she's got a very interesting story. But let me just talk about this article I ran into. It's called JavaScript Visualized Promises Execution, or Promise Execution. And as you can see on the page that's there right now, there is the article also embeds a YouTube video. But if you scroll down into this article, what you'll see is she has taken these visual elements, right? And I think you'll have to scroll down a bit more. And she uses this to describe how code written in a promise actually executes in the Java runtime and how it's handled. And there was a part of this that I didn't know. I didn't know that there was this, I think it's, I forget what it's called. And I can't quite see it here right now, but it's something like a micro queue or something like this. There are elements of how this actually works that I didn't know and I didn't understand. It was really great to read the article, but also to watch the video. The video is just, I think, terrific. She does a really great job of explaining how promises work. And if you remember, because we are talking a lot lately, why am I talking about promises? I'm talking about promises because we have spent the last 6 months talking about migrating from fibers to async. Async await is just a syntactic wrapper around promises. So if you don't really understand how promises work, you really don't understand to a good degree how async and await works. So for me, this was great. And I think if you get a chance, you should read the article. It is very informative. It's a different way of explaining this stuff. And I think she has a really good and deep understanding of this. And I'm actually compelled now to read her other articles that she has on Dev 2.0. This is not, I believe, published on Dev 2.0. I think this is published on her personal blog site. But I'm now compelled to actually read through her entire JavaScript Visualized series. There are 7 articles. That's 6. This is 7. See, I can't even count. 7 articles altogether that she has on this. And yeah, I want to give props to her. I think she's, I wish I had seen something like this before, and I wish others would do it. And others have done diagrammed explanations of computer concepts. Hers are rather dynamic, as you could see in some of these. Not only does she draw it out, but she also shows the flow. And she has code segments that are put at the side, and she'll explain what happens as you step through the code, how it moves from, you know, the call stack into the queue, and where it ends up in the promise object itself. It's terrific. I'm going to have to watch it a couple more times because although it helped me understand, I don't still have a great understanding of this, and I would like to, you know, be able to turn around and tell anybody exactly how it works the way she has described it. But it's, again, I think it's awesome. And I think I'm going to want to try to do more visual explanations like this. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into it in this program itself. So kudos, Lydia. Great. Okay. And I mentioned that there are some things that I found out that were a little shocking to me. And shocking in the sense that she's a very young woman. She's been doing this for a while, trying to figure out and here's the reason why. She's got 2 videos on her channel, and this one has 48,000 views. We have nothing like that. So I was like, how does somebody get 48,000 views with just one video? She's got another video that's got I think 40,000 views, but it's many years before, like 5 years before. How does somebody do this? And it turns out that she's been doing this a long time, in the sense that as a young woman, when she graduated from high school, she decided that she just didn't want to go to college. It wasn't going to work for her. She went right into doing development as a profession. She had been coding since she was 15. She had maintained a blog and built a big blog following. And so she has a fairly large Twitter following. She uses Twitter. She blogs from time to time on Dev2O and kind of shares her journey and also her understanding. So she's been around. I think she's only in her mid-20s right now, and she produces some really great stuff. So I am floored. I am pleased that I was able to find this and do more. Do lots more, Lydia. If you see this video and you hear from us, I think what you're doing is great, and it's helpful to me. And I'm old, and so it's awesome. So keep on doing it. Excellent.
Well, I tagged her in the MeteorJS post, so there's a small chance that she is going to see this.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah,
Good.
excellent. Yeah. So
Yeah, so also if you want to one day contribute to Meteor, then understanding the differences, for example, between the micro task queue and the macro task queue in the event loop is a crucial thing in order to do any async critical features. Also on the client, there are lots of things right there. So you should definitely check that out. It's worth for anyone, especially when it comes to performance. I have to get back to some different thing in terms of build tools. So we just talked about, or I just talked about building things together. And now there is a tool that you can use to split code back into smaller chunks. So why is that? Why do I want to do this? Well, here's the thing. Meteor does that itself. It's called code splitting. So you have a certain code, and then it gets split into whatever smaller chunks of code you need. For example, Meteor does that by splitting code into server and the client bundle. So you don't need to, on the one hand, you have a strict separation of things. And on the other hand, you have, of course, better performance. You don't need to send everything to the client that is not required. That's the same also for dynamic imports. But there is a tool. It's called Kuto. What's how? I'm not sure.
I'm not entirely sure.
So, but it helps you basically, or its premise is to make your website faster by splitting up the code back into smaller chunks. And so it's also its target. It targets the classic single page applications or apps that have a bigger bundle size. And then the idea is to have a main bundle that is always loading, and then it loads afterwards smaller chunks of static sub bundles, I could say. And then this helps you to optimize the caching and only loads what's necessary. So you have an initial larger size because it's used Acorn for the traversal and all that stuff in order to understand what's actually happening in the code. And then this is a little offset, or it's a little bit bigger in the beginning, but after that it should be smaller. That's the premise. That and this should help, especially if you have many subsequent loads. if they happen a lot, then this should be something where your app definitely benefits from. And it's from a former Google, I think, Sam Thorgood. And he's the tool creator. And I think from what I understood in his blog post, he was angry about Webpack, which is a very famous build tool out there, which many people use. And I can relate to a little bit because it became very big. It became very complex. You can do a lot, and at the same time, you may be limited on other parts of that. I personally are rather someone who likes the roll up, and but that's my personal flavor. And I think he just got angry at it and tried to optimize his build chain with this tool in order to get his 100% lighthouse score every time he analyzes his own apps.
He does have a video that's associated with this. So like the last author, there is an embedded video where he gives a talk on this a little bit. It's really interesting because, you know, the idea that he's got behind this code splitting is that, and you kind of get the sense that he comes from an environment where they might be shipping deltas, shipping changes to either the front end or some parts of the code on a frequent basis. And every time that you make that ship, and if it's an entire bundle, and with Meteor, it can be a very large bundle, right? Well, he believes any bundle over a megabyte is large, and this is what Kudo is sort of geared towards, right? And I was smiling to myself when he was like over a megabyte. I was thinking, wow, he's not seen a Meteor bundle, you know, which can sometimes be hundreds of megabytes.
Or not even just Meteor apps. I've seen other apps that are also, you can have 10 megabyte single page applications below it and stuff. And I think it's a valid point because depending on where you're located in the world, 1 megabyte might be nothing or a huge amount of data.
Everything.
So that really depends.
I would like to make a quick correction. Like, you know, when you say 100 megabytes, that's the entire bundle that you upload to the server. That's not what gets shipped to the client. That's single megabytes at the best
for the client.
Yes. Okay. If you go into 10, then you have some serious optimization that you should have done a while ago.
That's wild.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, maybe I'm working with old information here. But in the end, though, it's what he is talking about. And if you watch the video that he has, one of the things he mentions is when he was at Google, these sizes matter to them because they're an international company. So they have to build for the sort of lowest common denominator in terms of user experience, right? In terms of network ability. And so that's where he comes from in the sense of looking at these and saying, okay, you know, if you're in a first world country, might not be an issue to you. But if you're in a developing country where infrastructure is not great, this could matter a lot in terms of your experience. So I think it's kind of interesting. I found the article to be a little confusing when I read it. I wasn't quite sure how to parse it. I needed to listen to him talk a little bit to get a better understanding. I don't know. Maybe you guys, having read it, thought it was clear, but you know, it wasn't so much to me.
I mean, it's very specific. It's as I said, it's one step in the build tool process, and this is even not a standard step, but this is like an optimization procedure. This is something you would usually put into a plugin and then run on top of it because you have
it as a post process, right? I mean,
it's like a post process, but this is nothing everybody needs because not everybody will have this use case, but we wanted to cover it because it's a specific use case, and you could also see like, hey, it's not always just bundling. Sometimes it's splitting up code back again.
It is interesting because I think, as you described at the beginning, at the outset of this, most build processes, most build tools take a lot of stuff, and then it ends up in one or two things, right? In our case, we get two things in the bundle. But in his case, he's saying, okay, now that we've gotten this one thing, there's still some more optimization that can be done. And it may not be the initial optimization, right? It may not be the initial load optimization, but every subsequent time that you want to make an update, you get an optimization out of it, because all we do is we ship the changes. We don't ship the things that are not changing, and you cache all the stuff that's there in place so that you don't have to, you basically, again, have a better user experience because you don't have these unnecessary cache invalidations, and you're reloading the same code, right? Or assets. It's all still there because those static things haven't changed. We're just shipping you the things that have. It's super interesting from the point of view. It's like it's not taking the same path that everybody else takes, and I think that makes it interesting.
I like the idea that as time passes, we have many automations as part of the bundler process to make these things just automatically. So the developer doesn't need to take action into it, because normally what is explained here, we cover it with dynamic imports. But the developer is the one in charge to analyze which are the opportunities to split
Right.
the code and smartly doing this. So automation, I love that.
Yeah, and he points that out. He does say that in most cases, when you do code splitting, you as a developer, you have to know the code. You have to be able to go in there and figure out what you're going to do. But in his case, it's like, well, we've taken some assumptions about how the code performs and so on, and we're going to analyze it, and then we're going to treat it a certain way, and it takes it out of your hand. And I think it's certainly, I don't know if this is something that, that might be a good experiment with a Meteor application to see if it does anything. But certainly the ideas are intriguing, aren't they?
Indeed. For me, I'm thinking like if as you describe it here, if it's going to work, kind of out of the box and everything, that's going to be nice until the edge cases come in.
That's right.
Which is always the problem.
Well, and then at that point, I think he builds a plugin API, right, to the tool, and then you can address your edge cases, hopefully.
Yeah.
If there's some
last thing on this that I find interesting is, he writes here that 71% reduction in size, but only 28% reduction in speed.
Yeah.
Which he theorized it has to do with V8 assembly of bunch of modules code, as this is still quite costly. Yeah. So even like in V8, there's still a lot of work that could be improved. Hopefully, if this is the case.
He's pointing fingers. He's pointing fingers.
All right. Speaking of new interesting projects in this area, is this thing called PG Lite from Electric SQL, and that's a WASM build of the Postgres, which in itself is very, very interesting, because one of the big things is that it works everywhere. So as I was reading to it, we can have it on the client and then save the in this case PG Lite, or could be also said SQLite in a way, to just a file or into, let me just jump here, where was it, because yes, so here I have a sample. You can just have in memory, or you can then move it to IndexedDB. You can have it run in Node, Bun, and Dino, everything, which is really nice. It's supposedly super fast. So this would be a potential replacement for your SQLite database, supposedly faster than that. And I would say in many aspects, probably a bit more kind of universal, because you can use the same API on a client, on the server. So that's something that we in Meteor like very much. It's still in alpha, so a bit careful about that, and also says it's reactive, real time, all the other things that we like to hear in Meteor.
I think it's also pretty cool. One of the things I think that they point out as the makers is that there've been a number of other light versions of Postgres before, but really are different implementations. And I think what they say is that this is actually an implementation based on the single user mode of Postgres. And this is how they're able to build this out and keep it so small. I think it's only like 2.6 or 2.8 megabytes in size. It's really tiny. But there are some limitations because I believe it's only a single user, single connection limitation in the database. It sounds to me like this is a great tool for if you're building an application and you are going to be using a larger database in the background, but you don't want to either install or implement or configure a standard database. You can use this as a way of testing your code and having a small footprint. And then when you're ready, you just swap out your connection string for the real thing. So that to me seems one of the use cases for this. But there are plenty of other ones. I mean, I think based on the way they've described this, you can imagine a number of different scenarios in which you can use it, including as an in-memory database, which is one of the other features that they mentioned.
Exactly. And I like you can use it like as in memory, and then, for example, build on top of, say, IndexedDB and all the other things. So that's, I think that's very nice. And it's an interesting project. So here we have, or just you can then save it to something memory, IndexedDB, or just into file.
Right. So pretty cool stuff. All right, guys. One of the things I want to pick up here, are we done with this at this point? Does anybody else want to this is so cool. I think we may all have something to say about it. But if not, I'm going to talk about something that's cool that's happened to the program. All right. And we've been around now for over 6 months. We're mostly, I would say 92%. That's a very precise number, but it's 92% Meteor. We talk about some other stuff also that's related. Mostly, I mean, the point behind this program is to provide developers and people that use Meteor in the Meteor community useful information that they can take and apply to their work, their applications, or their own self-development. And that's the other part of what we do here is focus on developer improvement and developer growth. And in doing that, now I've gotten a little off topic there, but that's kind of where we are. And we've been doing this for about 7 months now and really kind of working things out. We have also been talking to a number of people that have been interested in sponsoring the program. And I'm happy to say that our first sponsor that we've closed a deal with is Meteor Software. Surprise, surprise. It makes a lot of sense. And what that means is that there's a portion of this program that's going to be sponsored by Meteor's Cloud Galaxy. As some of you know from a previous episode, Meteor Cloud is going back to the Galaxy brand, and that is going to be the name of the product going forward. And we're going to be doing some work with them. So part of our sponsorship includes credits on Galaxy. And so we're going to be spending some time on that segment. Understanding Meteor is going to be a sponsored segment by Galaxy. And we're going to be spending some time looking at Galaxy, sharing how we use the tools, how you can actually do better debugging and performance profiling of your applications with APM. And it might be Qadira APM, it might be Monty APM, but with the APM tools. And also building projects that you may want to take on yourselves and expand upon and build into actual products. So as you may remember, Jan and I did a podcast a little while back on an article that he wrote featuring a application for real-time monitoring. So we'll be doing more things like that as we go forward. All right. So I think that's really I don't have a lot more details to share right now, but that's it. So there'll be branding. You'll see it here somehow. We'll figure it out as we go forward, but it'll be starting next month, which is next week. And you'll be seeing some of that, and we might be closing some other sponsorships that you'll hear about soon. Okay, so all good in the sense that we are doing this in order to be able to give a better experience to you and give you more things that you can find useful and help in your understanding and use of MeteorJS platform. All right, I've talked enough about this, and I think we can move on from there. We missed out on a couple of things last week, right? Right, Storyteller? I mean, there were some things that we were going to do, we didn't get to do, but a very specific thing with a very specific important person in the community. I want you to let people know about that.
Yes. So we promised to have a talk with Harry Adele, which didn't happen, but it's coming on Saturday, as I was reliably informed. It's going to be under a deep dive section. So stay tuned for that this Saturday, correct, Alim?
That is a Saturday. That's correct. Yes. So we'll see you then.
So that's coming up. Well, I kind of want to mention very quickly one thing.
Mm-hmm.
There has been, you could say, a leak or a preview of how Galaxy is going to look, because they have been promising us a redesign or update. So this kind of leaked on Twitter, or leaked in quotes. So this is how the new UI is going to look like. I very much like it. Very nice, slick, modern. And speaking of liking, if you like this show, or if you like what we are providing with information, make sure that you have not forgotten to hit the like button at the bottom below this screen. And with that, I guess it's time for Nacho to shine.
All right.
First is Jan, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
as I introduced in the beginning of this episode, today we want to discover a little bit the build tool part of Meteor and understanding Meteor. And this is also why we invited Nacho to give some of his insights on extending the Meteor build tool. And before we do that, I'd like to give some more introduction on the build tool about Meteor. And just as a bridge between my very simple introduction and the specifics of Meteor, there is also very comprehensive yet compact video from Scott Tolinski, who was also very big in the Meteor community for a certain time. I think he's now doing much more broader videos on many more topics, but he also has a very good Meteor video playlist. So and you can check that out, because this goes a little bit deeper into the build tools, and it covers build tools, for example, like Gulp. And I just want to show you one thing that's an interesting overview. If you take a look at the Gulp tool, which is, by the way, I think even the same age of Meteor or something like this. It's super old. It's very old. I've seen it already in 2014 or something.
Yep.
When I worked somewhere else, and it's basically the same thing I just showed in the beginning, and it's taking stuff, it's transforming stuff, it's putting stuff out. Yeah. And when you take a look at the Webpack overview, it's the same thing. You have some modules, you have some file types, you have some stuff there in your project. It takes this together and puts something out. And then there is, I think, the best overview is the Parcel plugin overview right now, which already has some kind of diagram and already some roles in it and what's that stuff. So if you're interested in build tools and you're currently only know Meteor, then it's still worth to check out these tools, try to understand them. It benefits your stack, your experience, everything. And now I'd like to transit over to show you the Meteor build tool again in a simplified way from top level, from high level. And I want to entry this with the comparison between MeteorJS as a platform and MeteorJS as a build tool. Because when we work with Meteor every day, then we usually use the Meteor platform actively when we write code, while the Meteor build tool runs in the background and creates the stuff that when we open the web browser is already displayed in the website. And this is like the Meteor packages you import, the Meteor object, the accounts, Mongo, DDP, all these things that give you certain features. And this is the stuff you usually use during runtime, right? So when you program it, you have runtime in mind. It's development. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing that there's runtime, but usually these are made for runtime. This is the Meteor features, and you import them in your app. You use them in your app. They handle the data layer for you. For example, the DDP is complete data layer handling for you, and you have sometimes support for various front ends. Yeah, you use React, you use Svelte, you use Blaze, Vue, whatever you like. And all this together is your source code using MeteorJS functionality. And this gets picked up by the MeteorJS build tool on file save, or on I think on file save, right? When you save a file, the build tool, there is the file watcher. The file watcher says, oh, there's a change. Hey, build tool, please go through everything and then check where the changes are and rebuild everything. And this actually covers so many things under the hood. This covers the JavaScript code you write. This covers any HTML or templating engine like Blaze or front-end engine you use, and CSS modules, bundling them together. But it also handles all the Meteor packages you import, because in the end, Meteor packages will be also only transformed in some kind of modules that will be bundled into your code. But at the same time, because we want to support NPM packages, it also has to be aware of that. Plus, Meteor packages can import NPM packages as well. So these are the things it takes care of. And this is what's done at the compile time. And a very important feature very early on in Meteor was there was this transpilation out of the box. So we were able, because there's always one of the newest Babel versions used there, we were able to write, I would say, bleeding edge code for a very long time in Meteor before others even had that, without 1,000 hours of configurations. And that was already a game changer. The bundling, that's again putting all them together. And there's an interesting part when you open your development Meteor app and take a look in the inspector, you can see that all your packages are included as a single script there. While in the production app, there will be only one big bundle in the end. So there's even different bundling depending on the environment. And for example, for production, there are also parts like minification. And very important thing that you should not underestimate, that was the reify that made Meteor be able to resolve and link modules even when you've written things like you wrote import a module within a function which is not located at the top level. And Meteor was just able to handle that. Meteor was just able to resolve all these modules, link this all together, and make this work. And if you ever wrote an app outside of Meteor, or an NPM package, and you had to manually handle all these things, and then you import some external package, and you just realize, oh my God, There is CommonJS, that's the module system from Node before Node 12. And there is ESM, which is the new emerging standard, or it should be already standard, but it's still kind of emerging. Then you have universal module definitions, AMD, and so on. And it was just overwhelming for me to manually handle all that. And then I just realized how comfortable it is that Meteor does all this hard work for you. And then in the end, you have your final runnable Node.js program, because Meteor is basically just Node.js, right? So this is a very, very simplified overview of the build tool. And there was a reason why we loved this already back in 2015 or 14 or whenever it became the way it was. You had this zero configuration build tool, and you had an auto rebuild. That was just awesome. It just did all the stuff for you, right? The code is automatically split into server and client, and it's exact code splitting. And that's perfect because you can do some things like isomorphism. You can write code that looks the same and is still executable on the server and on the client. And with the ISO build, which is some kind of an extensibility, or it's like a layer on top of the Meteor build tool, you can still extend that. And this is what the community did, I think. I mean, there are compilers. You can write a compiler plugin that picks up a certain file format and then hooks into this whole build tool chain, basically, and makes it available, makes this certain file format available. I just try to find an example. Like, let's say you want to support SCSS, then there is a Meteor package for 7 SCSS. I think Meteor community packages covers that, right? And or post CSS is also a package we cover, I think. And then you can use this ISO build to write a compiler package to transform all the SCSS with some native SCSS processor and make this a bundled CSS, which Meteor in the end places in the output files. Awesome. You can integrate with this. You can integrate so many front ends. This is why Meteor is supporting so many front ends, because we have this tool chain that allows us to integrate various kinds of things with ease. The compliance part was actually my biggest argument pro Meteor at that time, because you just imported stuff and it just worked. I didn't have to fiddle around with things. I just could import something from somewhere, and it just worked. I didn't have to fiddle around Babel and configurations and all that stuff. And that was perfect, at least at the time when it came out. And because of that, we had modern ECMA features in 2015, 2016 already. I mean, I was writing async await code at the time when people wrote articles about, oh, async await will be the new thing. And I just wrote async await code because Meteor was at that time bleeding edge and just supported promises with some syntactic sugar, async await. And so that was just great. And now we're a little bit at that point. So I also have some of the the red part of the image. It's a little bit less configurable than modern build tools nowadays, because now that's of course the trade-off. You have zero config with some kind of extensibility, but it's not so granular as with these other tools, with the standalone tools, and the build times increased over the years. Although I have to say this was fixed many times. I think it was always a race against build time increased, and then build time got fixed again, and then it decreased again. So it's a never-ending race. There are still features missing, like tree shaking. Remember my predictions beginning of the year? Let's see how that worked out. There's, because of this legacy code compliance, it's still holding back some things, in my opinion. And it still requires the full Meteor tool chain. So it's not completely separated. It's not a standalone, it's not a standalone thing. It's all integrated. That's great, but it's also sometimes blocking depending on what you're trying to achieve. And because of that, it's hard to replace by modern build tools. And now I have to raise the question, is it really? Because this is now the part where I will transit over to Nacho, who will show his view on the Meteor build tool and how it works with an external build tool. Is that correct? Did I say that correct, or is that somewhat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfectly said. So yeah, I am going to talk about an approach that I have been using on the projects that I have worked on, with the idea to get an external bundler of your choice and include it on the Meteor bundler and have the best benefits from both worlds. One side, Meteor and all that we know that is beneficial for us, data isomorphism, reactivity, and everything else. And then the good part of Mother Bundler, which we are getting behind because Meteor feels like a little bit blocked in that area, right? So I'm going to first introduce myself because this is the first time I participate in the podcast, or at least the official one. So yeah, my name is Nacho Codonyer. I have been working 8 years into Meteor in private projects, I have to say. And now I have shifted to work in two things. I am supporting the release of the Meteor 3 with the Meteor core team. So we want to get there, and we are actually close to get there. And not only that, I will also try to contribute into what is going to come next. And in the other part of the capacity that I have for my work, I am developing a passion project. I am developing something in a specific business domain, which is basically a receipt scanner. So you just get your mobile phone, you take a picture of a receipt, and you will get insights about your expendings, but also opportunities for saving money in the future. But this project is also an opportunity for me to dive into the Meteor ecosystem, the technical side of it. In this project, I have used an external bundler, in my case has been Webpack, to build the project and get all the benefits surrounding it. But I'm also using their CapacitorJS as an alternative of Cordova.js, which is for the native experience to be up to date to the last trends for hybrid applications, which is the original thing from Meteor. So how is the bundler integration made? Just utilizing scripts and some project configuration in your actually app code base is what makes this approach to work. I wanted to avoid diving into the compiler approach of Meteor or go into the Meteor core complexity, because this can be just a way of going on and then get frustrated, or at least is how I have seen it in the past. And I also wanted to dedicate some time to implement practically into a business product as well. So I needed to balance. So this approach that I'm going to talk about, you can adapt it in any bundle of your choice. I have opted in Webpack because it is a maturity product already that is used and has a large community that is behind it. In fact, it is still being used in Next.js framework as the bundler behind the scenes. So you can imagine that you will get there many contributions around anything related with this bundler, feature-wise, but also maintenance, which is really important. And also, the cache system is really advanced, and I have noticed really quick gains on rebuilding things on your development experience. So here I have depicted and illustrated a diagram for you to understand how this approach works. It's easy. What you basically need to do is to ensure the model bundler is the one that is watching and compiling your application code. That is going to produce an intermediate bundler, which is going to have all the Meteor packages externalized. That means that they are not resolved. Then is the turn of the Meteor bundler to compile and watch that intermediate bundler, inject the proper Meteor core and packages in, and then get the final app bundle. Okay, so how this integration is configured. First of all, what you need to do is to ignore Meteor to watch and compile the application code. For that, I'm not sure if the community is aware that we have a Meteor ignore file. So whatever we put in the Meteor ignore file is going to stop reacting on changes on those contexts. In the case of my example, in the simple task project, I have identified where the app code lives, and I have completely ignored changes. The next thing that you need to do is to configure the external bundler. For this, you need to set up several configurations. You need to set up the client configuration and the server, and also to distinguish between development and production, because usually you want to have different configurations in. Then what you need to ensure is that the entry point of your configuration in Webpack points directly into the application code. Here I do it for the server, for the client, and here I do it for the server. And the last thing is that the file generated needs to be in a folder that Meteor can respond to changes in, as I do here in server.js or client.js here. The other things is just configurations to enable dynamic imports and other things that I'll explain later. Another essential configuration is that you need to say to the model bundler, ignore Meteor context, ignore Meteor package import. So you do this by putting the externals configuration in your Webpack config, but this is enabled in all model bundlers. This is why you can do just that and have it the approach working on other bundler. And the next thing, once we have the intermediate bundler already generated, at this point we have it, what you need to do is that configure the Meteor entry points in order to point them directly to the intermediate bundlers. In this case, it's the client.js and server.js. This is made, as you know, with the Meteor main bundle configuration that we have in the Meteor projects. And the last thing is that you need to develop some kind of scripts to handle this experience of everyone bundling the thing that they do to. In this case, I have using the concurrently npm runner to improve the dev experience. And I have created several scripts to start Meteor, to start Webpack, but compiling and watching the client, to start Webpack for compiling the server, something that covers Webpack, the both things in parallel, and then a start command that runs everything together and also in parallel. Here, I have also the repositories that I have used. For the example, I have adapted in Webpack and in Bit. So I'm going to get in here. You can check it out. And there you will have the Webpack configuration with everything that I have added there and more extra configuration that I explained. And here you just have the video about, in this right side, we have the the script going on, is already running. And the example is that you change something in the application code, then Webpack is reacting on it, and it's just Meteor taking over control of the intermediate bundle and updating it. So, yeah, so with this setup, a mother bundle is integrated. So which kind of things we are getting here, which advantages we get? One thing that is problematic in Meteor projects, in Meteor applications when they grow, actually, is that you deliver heavy bundles. This is affecting the final user experience, basically. So the mother bundles are just covering that part. And with 3-second, which has been a long requested feature in Meteor, you get your bundle reduced. In this case, has been from 1.7 megabytes to 1 megabyte. Okay, I know this is not enough according to the rules that we learned before, but it still is something, right? And just imagine in large project, because this is just a simple task example well known in the community, which is a small applications. You get this reduction, but just imagine in large projects. And also there are other mechanisms to reduce even more that I will explain later. Other observation that I want to make here is that this is the bundle visualizer from Meteor, as you know, but you can also integrate the Webpack bundle visualizer. What you are going to get here is from the client and server bundle independently, which is the information of each module that is imported. And you also have some advanced tool to filter it, to search, and so on. Then another advantage is the support of dynamic imports. This is the alternative way to even reduce more the initial bundle of your application. The difference of these dynamic imports using a standard rather than the Meteor ones is that using dynamic imports in a modern tool, you will use the HTTP protocol to serve your splitted bundles. By doing that, you can, above all, in a large project, you can get the benefits of external network components, like to set up a CDN, or you can also get the benefit from service workers for offline mode and do some caching around those files. The next thing is that as you are growing your code base, you can expose easily secrets of the services that you consume. As Meteor is sharing code between client and server, you can, by accident, make some compromise in your security. The modern tools usually have also a way to overcome that with the defined plugin. It is also embedded in other bundles. So this means that when you use conditional blocks saying, okay, Meteor is server, and this is the processes that are going to take over only on the server, or maybe you have some secrets, can be within a block or can be in the root file, and you have also delimiter comments to specify this is for the server or for the client. What is going to happen is that when you generate the client app code, this is not leaked. This is completely removed. This is something that Meteor cannot do in this moment. And you compromise your security sometimes. Another thing is that you can import many tools that are in the open source or in the community in general. One example of this is the tool of Workbox. Workbox is basically a tool that, if I'm not mistaken, is developed and maintained by Google. And you can rely on this tool to make this service worker experience smooth. Currently in Meteor, you need to, I think I have used in the past some snippets in the community, and you need to act on that. And you need to make modifications on it. Why we are not relying in a tool that can do that for us and simplify our daily work. So with here in the configuration of Webpack file, I have this, And here I am specifying the different levels of layers that I have. This is something that I have done in the Buildroid application, which is currently in production in some beta. You can put your email, I can invite you. And you can see how this is working there using an external bundle and even also capacitor and the other things around. And the last tool that I wanted to mention, these are just examples, is MeteorJS. This is some request that I have got in the Meteor forums when I talked up about this approach. And someone mentioned this tool, and I fell in love with that. But at the moment, I have some constraints to use it. The main constraint was that these tools needs newer versions of Node. And in Meteor 2, we are restricted to 14. This is going to change in Meteor 3. This is good, but for all projects, you cannot do it that really well. But finally, I was able to do how I say, okay, the Webpack build, you are going to use using Volta, which is a node management tool, the proper version of it. And then it is working. And the configuration is just this. So this tool is really interesting to get huge performance gain, because it's like before we were talking about post compilations tool that automate things for you. MeteorJS is getting your components, React components in this Vue ecosystem, and it is improving them, the re-rendering, in a huge way. I have been experienced this. I adopted recently on my project, but is promising what we can get. You can get more information in the page about this. But there are, with advantages, you also get some disadvantages. And these disadvantages that I have analyzed is that you can no longer use DDP dynamic imports. These are specific imports in the Meteor ecosystem that are working over the DDP protocol. I don't think this is major drawback, at least for me on the project that I'm working on, because maybe in the long run you don't need that any other application is working with the standard HTTP dynamic imports. And the problem with DDP imports is that all the overload is on your application server, so you cannot use CDNs, you cannot do any other thing. And in large project, I have been struggling with this on the past. Another thing is that you cannot use nested imports. Nested imports is when you put the imported statements in the conditional parts of your application, if a statement, functions body, or whatever. I don't think this nowadays is a problem, because you can use code splitting dynamic imports. And also, this is not a standard. It's not in line of the JavaScript ecosystem and the tendency and the direction it's doing. And for me, it's like dirty code, making difficult to port outside your code of your application to other platforms if you like anytime, or even the reverse, putting some external tools and use them on your Meteor application. I'm talking, for instance, about the style guide storybook. The storybook needs to understand your code. With these kind of statements, cannot understand that, for instance. This is just an example. And then not Meteor HMR, which I need to say that this is not possible. It's more my lack of knowledge about this part of Meteor. I tried to enable it, but I didn't understand all pieces of this component in Meteor. But I think if I dedicate a little bit more, I could enable this also with this approach. So now that I am in the Meteor core, possibly this is something that I could evolve. And yeah, I just going to say thanks for listening what I wanted to say. There are several topics on the forums about this. One is Meteor Webpack integration, where you can ask any questions about this approach or anything that you like to say. And the other one is an open discussions to the community saying, okay, which is the direction that we want to have beyond Meteor 3 in terms of the Meteor bundler? What tools we would want to adopt? Will we want this approach of external tool, having this trade-off? Or maybe we have other alternatives that are really interesting, like MeteorBit. MeteorBit, I'm personally diving into it and feels promising because the cons of this approach are sorted. I'm not sure if all the advantages are there. I am still working on it and trying to understand it better, but maybe this is the direction to go. So yeah, thank you.
Very great. I think this is, from what I see right now, a very cool transition from where we are to where we could be, in my opinion. And I don't know how you both think about it, Alim and Jan, but I think we definitely should keep an eye on this approach as a community and talk about it and think about it, what we can learn from this approach and where we want to go. Because I really like to see something like this in the future, where we can benefit from so many things from the outside ecosystem. I don't want to talk about the outside ecosystem all the time. I want to be part of the ecosystem, you know, and
Yeah.
that's actually what Meteor should be. And this is why I think this is a great example how or where it could go. I unfortunately have to go now, which is why I was already talking here. So I wish you a great weekend. Happy Easter for anyone who is doing Easter holidays. And see you next week on the program.
Take care, Jan. We'll see you next
Bye.
week. Enjoy.
See you. Happy holidays.
Take care.
So, in a follow-up to what Jan was saying, I don't have a huge amount to offer here. I was sitting down and learning as we were going along. So thank you so much, Nacho, for spending the time going deep into the build tool and the tool chain and trying to understand how to put in or inject a modern bundler into it. It's really interesting to see. I think the approach of doing a pre-injection and then isolating out those parts that will necessarily be post-processed by the Meteor build tool itself, it makes sense to me, but I have no other frame of reference to go from. So, as I said, I'm picking up from this. Obviously, I need to spend some time taking a look at it to understand how it works, maybe do a couple of experiments myself. And then if this is the approach, does this mean that you could then use the same approach to drop in any other bundler other than just Webpack?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, you can adopt this. In fact, I use a bit also. I have another repository there. But there I have some troubles with performance, specifically because my approach is using the build command to do that, not the dev server of Bit itself. But yeah, the direction is that you can adopt any bundler that you like just by configure. One drawback that has this approach is that it's not zero configurable. But moving into the Meteor core can do that. We can do that work for you, and the developer is transparent into see what is happening behind the scenes or which configuration. But the good part is that you will have the extensibility of the modern tool itself. And this is one of the good things. But I also want to really mention the MeteorBit thing, because they are creating a compiler, which is a concept within the Meteor core. And they are even using two servers, the Bit server and the Meteor server, working both together and getting a huge speed on the developer experience, because Bit in the dev server side is really cool.
Yeah. That sounds cool. Storyteller?
Yeah, I think one big thing is when kind of mention here is, people might be asking, oh, why don't we have this? Sorry, why don't we get this into next release? It's not that simple. There is also discussion there going on as well about which bundler should be the default and so on. Plus, we already have a big 3.0 release, so adding any more migration step is not desired. So, you can either go and try what Nacho has done and what other people are trying or have done with Vite, or wait till we have decided how we want in general as a community proceed with this. So I just wanted to add it at the end. It's not as simple and easy in our other consideration as well when going forward in this direction.
All right, then. So, Nacho, you're welcome to stick around if you have to leave. That's understandable. We have enjoyed having you here today. We're going to be moving on to some of the standard stuff that we talk about, stuff about you and things that you could be doing to improve your own career prospects and, of course, grow as a developer. But before that, I just want to point out that if you've been watching and lurking around and thinking this is good stuff, and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please consider doing so. We're at 175 subscribers at this point. We'd like to close out. I know we're not going to do it for the month, but we'd like to get through the holidays, perhaps, getting closer to 200. If we get to 200 users, that'll be great. We really want more, but if we get to 200 subscribers, not users, subscribers, in a short time, then that would be an awesome thing and a wonderful spring gift to us. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking about it, hit the button, hit subscribe, and show us your appreciation. You'll get notifications when we have a new program out. And you'll also help the YouTube algorithm share our program with more people who can then discover and learn the beauty of Meteor. The beauty of Meteor. Whatever. Spring is beautiful. Everything's beautiful, right? So.
Yes. Speaking of notification, you can also go to our planned future live episodes. And if you click on them, there's the option to get notified before the stream starts. So that's another way how to stay up to date.
Yeah. So, storyteller, what could people be doing for themselves soon? Where can they learn more and grow their knowledge?
So the big place to go to meet people, to learn more, to listen to interesting people are conferences, and we have quite a few of them coming up in April and May. I just actually checked very quickly. There's one in Prague, pretty expensive, a big one as well. That's at the end of May, so we'll talk about that probably in one of the future episodes. So I'll mention probably next time so that people can get cheaper tickets. But you can see we have them here on the screen, so you can check them out. Let me actually even post a link to this file in the chat. No,
because this gets played with in a lot of ways. Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll PDF it, and if you want it, just in your subscription, just let us know your email address, and we'll send it to you.
So I would like to point here a few of them. I'm corrected. The first one that's coming up on April 11th to 13th is by SIS in Nashville, Tennessee, in America. And I have also noticed here that we have on April 23rd to 26th Great International Developer Summit in Bengaluru, India. So hello to our Indian developers over here. And let me pick up here another one to highlight would be Test Coast. So which one is in Gothenburg, Sweden. Let's take a quick look at their website. And as you can guess by the name, it's all about testing, which is I think another big story in Meteor in general that we will have to do a episode in the future. But this is all about, getting there, making new connections, and consuming what other people have prepared. There is something more that we would like to suggest to you, right, Alim?
Yeah, one of the ways that you can grow as a developer, and one of the things I used to enjoy doing is hosting live talks over at the Meteor NYC meetup, which is something, it's coming back, and it's coming back virtual. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But in the meantime, one of the things you can do is to answer these calls for papers. And calls for papers are proposals that you would send out saying, hey, I would like to talk about X, Y, or Z. And there are several different opportunities to do so, many of them closing within the next few weeks. We have a list of them here that we are sharing that, one of them that's closing out actually in the next 2 days is the City JS Athens talk. But there are actually 3 of them that I want to just highlight here, which is there is the Tech Lead Conference, which the CFP is closing on March 31st. Do we have that page up for the CFP? So that is the tech conference page, and it's completely online. You don't have to go anywhere for this, so you can, if they accept you to give the talk, you don't have to worry about traveling. You could do it from your room, or in my case, your dungeon, as I said before. So you just have, what will happen is you will go to the link to the call for presentation, and it'll have some instructions on what they're looking for. And if you scroll down there, we can show some of the information that they collect in this. Jan, do you mind scrolling down a bit and just let them see what they're asking for on this? So they're going to get your name. They're going to get a short summary from you about what it is. They're going to ask you to categorize it. They're going to ask for a few other things. And do they ask for past talk?
Yes, but it's not required.
Yeah. So if you do have some experience giving talks in the past, whether it's at Impact, which we used to run, or even if it's at a meetup, you write it down there. If you haven't, don't worry about it. Just put it down. A couple of things happens here. One is it increases your profile. I know from experience that there have been members of our community in New York that when they came and gave a meetup talk, not too long afterwards, they were peppered with offers for opportunities. It could be jobs. It could be side hustles. It could be working on a startup. The CTO of let me take that back. So in any case, I was going to give an example that I'm mixing 2 things up, so that wouldn't have been a correct example. So in any case, you might want to just give that a shot. And number 2, what it does is it also raises Meteor's profile. More of us going out there and offering to give talks lets people know that Meteor is not a technology of the past, that there's still something happening here. And you don't have to talk directly about Meteor if you're talking about different types of things. For instance, you're talking about a particular problem domain where Meteor is how you solved it. That's one way of doing it. And so it doesn't have to be a pure Meteor talk, but talking and letting people know about what you're doing and how you're solving it and how Meteor is part of it is a really great way to burnish your own story, burnish your own credentials, but also let the world know that Meteor is still a tool that you can use to build applications and solve problems. So let's go to the other one, which is the High-C DevSec conference. And that is in Köln. The conference itself is being held September 25th to 26th, so there's a little time. But the CFP closes on April 8th. So, it's coming up, But if you are a security specialist or have done something with security or are interested in talking about maybe how Meteor deals with security, and it could be how we handle the accounts, how we deal with securing the database, things like that. Maybe you have a security checklist that you follow through to meet some kind of compliance, internal or governmental, regulatory. If you want to do a talk on something like that, here is another opportunity. And one of the things I would say, by the way, is when you're contemplating whether or not you want to make that leap, put the proposal out. And what I will say is, put your talk together, reach out to us and say, you know what, we would like to, you would like to do a talk based on your proposal and see how well it works on with an audience. And we'd be happy to do that as either part of this episode, meaning part of the weekly broadcast, or as a standalone item that might be a hot topic, a deep dive, or something else. So there are opportunities, and we can help you with that, and we can help you fine tune and shape and get your messaging across if that is something that's valuable to you. And finally, for those of you in Asia, there is API Days Singapore that's being held in Singapore, April 17th through the 18th. So this conference is happening very close, but they are really interesting in the sense that their CFP doesn't close until April 16th. So the day before the conference, they're still accepting proposals. I don't know how that works. This is kind of interesting to me. But if you're interested in pursuing a talk in Singapore, which I hear is beautiful, I've never been there, but so many of my colleagues have been recently, especially over COVID, it might be worth a try for you. So those are the three I want to highlight. As you can see, if Storyteller switches back to the list, there is quite a list here that we have going through the end of April. And then we have a list that we've started developing for the month of May. So,
Alim, just
yes.
I'm looking here at the application for API days, and they say you can apply at any time, but the application deadlines say 1 month prior to each event because they have multiple events. So,
okay, so maybe this is just an error on their part in terms of they have a general rule. So API days is not something that I think you can apply to up to that date, right? So I think then in the case of API days, then it's closed out at this point, correct? Because we've passed the March 15th or the March 16th date. So maybe if you're interested in that, but can't do, are interested in doing an API days, there is one in New York. And the CFP close date for that is April 29th. And so, hang on a second here. There is
that should be done later because the one at least for the API days in New York, that is April 30th and May 1st.
Right. So that would be
tomorrow is the closing date.
It's actually going to be tomorrow, right? Or today or tomorrow. So again, that's not a good one. So in that case,
you have Helsinki, you have London, Australia, and Paris later on in the year.
Right. So if you're interested in another one, we could just talk about the React Norway. Most of our, or many of our developers that are working with Meteor do spend time building it with React. And so if you're interested in finding an opportunity to talk and you've built a React app, maybe you have something to say, then React Norway might be a place to try. That CFP closes April 1st, so that's coming up pretty soon. Maybe that was not a good choice. So I'm picking some pretty bad choices here right now. All right, you know what? As far as something coming up that you might be interested in, Front End Nation, which is down towards the bottom of the list there. Do you see it? That CFP closes on April 30th. No, it's on the first page. On the first page, on the second column, and it's the third item from the bottom. So scroll back up. There we go. There it is. There it is. Second column, third from the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if we want to just show that. So we're learning something about each of these as we go along too. I didn't realize that the API days item was something that was closely dated. I just thought it was interesting that you could apply up to the same date, but I guess not. My source is not correct in terms of the deadlines. So again, with this, they have what they're looking for, and then they collect some information from you, right? Those are what you can get out of it. Okay, they're looking for open source contributors, company leaders, developer beginners, and other front-end enthusiasts. So I'd say give it a shot. Talk about your apps, talk about your experience in building your applications, and also get Meteor mentioned in there. I think that about does it for the CFPs, don't you?
Yep, agreed.
All right.
So let us know what you think. Let us know, especially if you are going to some of the conferences or want to speak any of the conference. Let us know if you submitted. Let us know if you have any question about anything we've talked about this episode down below in the comments, or email us or reach out to us via social media, the Meteor forums, anywhere. We want to know what you think, what's going on. Let us know, about some interesting things that we could cover. Everything is a far game world. Just let us know, that I should probably not do the podcast while I'm jet lagged. All of that comes in.
So, as you guys know, or you may know if you've watched the last couple of weeks, Jan has been on his American tour. Maybe he'll have like T-shirts with like the different places that he's been to written across it, that he'll have for sale for us at some point. But Jan's been on his American tour. Now he's back. I think you arrived, 2 days ago? Back home?
On Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I said 2 days ago, and he had to say, on Wednesday. So, jet lag is still with him.
Yeah,
right?
And my luggage arrived just yesterday. So.
Oh, God. Oh, that's not so great.
Oh.
So, anyway, before we close out today, I just want to remind you guys that open source is not free. It is built with the labor and efforts of the folks in the community that are willing to share their time and their effort with you. And as I've said before, it's built on their time and often on their dime. So if you can, I would really like it if you would think about the folks that do have sponsorships, reaching out to them and sharing your appreciation for the work that they do, and let them know it. And you could do that in terms of the ones that have GitHub sponsorships, like the two Jans, as we call them here, the Jan brothers. They have GitHub sponsorship pages, and there are two ways that you can demonstrate your appreciation. One is, and you can do both, one or both, is you can, star their repos and give them a star and follow them so that the work that they're doing, and that lets them know that somebody appreciates them. But there's also, you can make a contribution, and it can be whatever you can afford, and it would be greatly appreciated. On top of that, I would like to also mention again that we have the MeteorJS. If you're going to look at something right after this and you're interested in learning more, there was a deep dive 3.0 overview that the Jan brothers did a few months ago on Meteor 3.0. And so we have the YouTube for that. And Jan, would you mind just showing them where in the playlist that is? I think this is a link to the playlist, right?
Yes, it should be, I think, the second, or should be like in the first one.
The first item in the deep dive playlist. So if you get a chance and you want to watch it, as a matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do is I am going to put this on the screen right now so that you guys can see it and go for it, right? So here we go. So this is where you'll find it. And I would suggest that you go watch that because you'll learn a lot about 3.0, and that is the future of Meteor. So it's worth a shot if you're really hungry still for more information and you've enjoyed what you've seen so far. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for coming. We're still kind of figuring out the next episode, and we'll let you know this week what we're up to. All right. But in the meantime, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.